Say maximum uncertainty. Markets really dislike uncertainty. And, this thing with what's going on with Iran and, of course, the Russia-Ukraine situation is, kind of in a distant background, but it still continues. So the main problem with the Iran situation is oil, and oil means energy, and energy means life. And so with the decrease in energy, it cuts everywhere. It cuts into fertilizer for food production. It cuts into transportation, anything to do with, travel, et cetera. So it's huge. It's really, really big. And I don't think the oil market has really gotten to a level that is accounting for the disruption that's already taken place, let alone what could be in the future. So in my view, oil is still undervalued or underpriced. And the metals have reacted differently than most people expect. They expect with this kind of uncertainty in the market that the metals would go up, and they haven't. They've stagnated and really are in a pretty broad trading range, all metals, gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. And I called that. I made that call. I thought that, these markets often do what they don't expect, and they anticipate the future. So we got a huge run-up in silver in January 2026. I put out information for my members to, look at taking profits, in the above 80, actually 80 and into the 100 range. Some did. I'm not sure that's the total top, but Bloomberg did an article from one of their technical analysts, well respected, and he basically put out a paper saying that he thought silver was perhaps done, that the run it had in January 2026 was over. He made an analogy to the 2016 move and other parabolic moves where it got to that high, it fell off sharply, and then it went sideways for a very long time, like years. And he made that argument. I'm not, first of all, the analogy he made is valid. Secondly, does that mean that it's going to happen again? And the answer is we do not know. I suspect the metals bull market is not over. I do see higher prices in both the metals going forward. But unlike some of my peer group, I think it's going to take longer than many of them are indicating. And even some of the banks are indicating, $100 silver by the end of this year. Is that possible? Of course it is. From my perspective, sitting here right now, subject to change, something could happen and disrupt, silver supply, or maybe a big new technology needing silver or whatever. But barring that, I see further movement going in a trading range, and I don't really think we're going to come out of that until probably the end of this summer. And at that point, we could still be between 75 and 85, for example, which is a good price. I mean, if your average price is in the 20s and it's at 80, you got 400%. So I'm not complaining about that price. What I'm suggesting is that we're in a wear you out phase, I think, of both the metals right now. I just had the $100 silver party in Las Vegas. I'd promised my membership that if we hit $100 silver, I would throw a party, and I did. And it was interesting because I had to put all the logistics together before silver got to 100. So I had to anticipate that it would. And if it didn't, and it hit, let's say, 85 as an example, I was just going to have the party anyway, because there's a lot of moving parts to put together something like that. Anyway, it did. It went over 100, as you know. But I'm coming back to your question, and one of the guys bought a boat, and I'm not talking like a fishing boat. I'm talking a boat.
Wow.
And he showed me a picture of it, and that's what he did. And that was, one of his dreams, or maybe the big dream for him. And I was just very happy for him, because obviously a lot of silver investors that have, are long in the tooth. I mean, some bought, for the last 20 years, some bought in the last year. But many are 5 or 10 years into this market, patiently waiting for silver to make a move, and it finally did. Substantial move. And why not cash out? I mean, that's the reason, everybody's got a different reason, for, one's wealth protection. That's generally everybody. People have dreams of houses, boats, college educations, charity, whatever. So there's a lot of reasons to protect your wealth and then have options once you have your, wealth intact, what to do. Yeah, well, again, some of the banks are looking at, triple digit silver, some by the end of this year, which could be. I don't know yet. I think the reason that I feel that it will go higher still is this. Normally, in a huge bull market, be it stocks or real estate, whatever the market is, the retail investor, the average person on the street, is talking up that market. So, real estate investors, I mean, maybe, for example, my mother-in-law, we've had a couple, two or three really good real estate booms in my lifetime. There was one here in northern Idaho, and, it was lots of people, primarily from California, but other states moving into the area, and they're just bidding up prices higher and higher and higher. And she was convinced, you can't lose, just like the lady buying the silver you just talked about, and brought me over to see a condominium. And this thing was just so overpriced. I couldn't believe it, but she was convinced that, all you could do is make money. That to me was kind of the top. So, man, it was. And I'm making a point, not that I call every top perfectly. The point I'm making is that the shoe shine boy giving stock tips, which is well-known metaphor from the 1929 crash, whether that's true or not, it makes a great story and it illustrates it perfectly. When you're getting your neighbors talking gold and silver, or somebody that, hated that sector and all of a sudden is really enthused about it, that's a top. And we didn't see that. What we saw was a lot of retail that was stale, had held it for years, never thought we'd get above 50 again. It hit 50, and there were a lot of sales at 50. People were, that's it. It's never going higher. Every time it goes to 50, the banks clobber it down. I'm not going to get the analogy of, Lucy taking a football away from Charlie Brown when he goes to kick the football, or Linus, whoever it is. She's holding the football to punt or kick, and then as soon as he gets there, she pulls the football up. They weren't going to let that happen again. So a lot of sales, and then a lot of sales into the move up to 100. So I think, as I've said earlier, we're going to have to wait and see how this really flushes out. But I don't think it's over. I think that we've got to see those people, your neighbors, people that never taught gold and silver, coming to the fore and saying, hey, silver is indispensable, essential, irreplaceable, unobtainium, and the price is going to $1,000. We start hearing that again, probably in a place where you want to start looking at, taking some profits.
Well, this is going to be the best earnings season in the history of the mining industry, at least in terms of gold and silver, because the price of those things have been rising. And, they were not rising, but still pretty high during the first quarter of the year. And that means that these gold and silver miners are getting more for each ounce that they sell. And they're generating a lot of free cash flow. Newmont, the biggest gold miner and one of the biggest silver miners, just reported yesterday. And they had free cash flow of $3 billion, which in the mining business is a lot of money to play with, And what they're doing right now is they're buying back their stock and they're raising their dividend, which is a really nice thing for them to do for shareholders. And at some point in the future, though, when you're generating that kind of free cash flow, it eventually burns a hole in your pocket if you're the CEO of a mining company and you start going out and making big acquisitions. In Newmont's case, their production is stagnant. And that's a tough thing to justify when you go before your shareholders. Why aren't you growing? You've got all this money. So at some point, they're going to start buying up the smaller miners. And if you own those smaller mining stocks, that's a good thing. That's generally a good thing because they'll have to pay a premium to get your stock away from you. Now, the same thing is happening across the gold and silver mining space where everybody's reporting relatively good numbers, whether they're a senior miner or a junior who's just getting started with a single mine or whatever. The numbers are looking pretty good for everybody. And that's not necessarily a buy signal because what you also have to look at is the trend in gold and silver prices. If gold and silver are going down, then it doesn't help you that a miner's earnings are going up in the short run because people assume that their earnings will go back down later on. It does give you some entry points for some of these miners because, if you've got all of a sudden a whole bunch more cash than you did a year ago, which a lot of these guys do, then you can use that cash to improve your company in various ways. You can cut debt. You can go debt-free. In a lot of cases, these guys can. You can raise the dividend. You can buy back stock. And that improves your company as an investment. And so if you're a potential investor, you should be looking at the companies that are doing things like that. Like if somebody, a junior miner, just went debt-free because they had so much free cash flow that they were able to do that, then all of a sudden they're a much more attractive company than they were when they had massive debt. So if you're building a portfolio of mining stocks, this is a good time to kind of root around in there and see who is, first of all, generating a lot of free cash flow, and second of all, using that cash to improve themselves. So if the stock's not going up while the company is improving its finances, for instance, dramatically, then that's maybe a buy signal. It's a good entry point because eventually people will recognize that this is a better company than it was last time they looked, and they'll start buying the stock and it'll go up.